This video is about overall stress and how it's the #1 important factor when we look at whatever our health and fitness goals are. So no matter whether your goal is to burn fat or to lose weight, it's to build muscle tissue, it's to gain cardiovascular fitness, no matter what it is, we have to look at how stress is the biggest impactor on that goal. Now, the first rule of today is that our brain is in control, or our nervous system is in control, and the brain is the center of that nervous system. So no matter what our goal is, we have to look at the mechanism of that. And our brain is in control of everything in our body, whether it's to our hormones, our metabolism, the way we move, our brain is in control. Okay? And its #1 priority, or its #1 job, is to keep us alive. It's survival, right? So if we are putting on fat, we're not building muscle tissue. That's because our brain sees that as there's a threat to our survival, and that holding on to fat and getting rid of muscle tissue is the best way to keep us alive. So what we need to do is pull our bodies out of stress so that it can start to adapt the way we want it to. We can start to build muscle tissue, get rid of fat, and turn anabolic. The second thing we'll go over today is, where does stress come from? So we look at the allostatic load of our body, and I'll go over what that means. Over here we have a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. Now the Golden Gate Bridge has an allostatic load. There's only so much it can handle. There's only so much from cars being on top of it. There's only so much from the wind from the bay in San Francisco hitting it. And there's only so much from the ground shaking there too. If all three of those things are too great at the same time, the bridge will fail. And then I asked the question, if we ignore renovation, do you think the bridge was stronger when it was first built or 30 years later? It was probably stronger when it was first built. Wear and tear over time will start to break down that bridge. Now over here we have the allostatic load of your body. Think of that as a bucket. Here's your stress bucket. There's only so much you can carry in your stress bucket. And wear and tear over time as we get older makes that bucket a little bit smaller. We can't carry as much. Yet, probably more and more things keep getting put in that bucket as we get older. And that's why we see our metabolism slow down, we start to see pain more often, we don't recover as well. It's because our bucket is too full for what we can carry. So let's talk about what goes into that bucket. What do we most commonly think of when we think of stress? We think of work, we think of finances, we think of relationships, family. All of these things play into one category of stress, what's called lifestyle stress. Now, lifestyle stress plays a huge part in our overall stress load. Your nervous system, your brain, does not know the difference between my boss is yelling at me and there's a bear chasing me. It sees them both as a threat to our survival. They create a very similar stress response in our body. And in our new age lifestyles, a lot of times we see this is probably turned up on high, right? It starts to fill up that bucket. So if we have a high mental emotional stress, it might take our bucket to right around here, okay? That's that lifestyle stress, the mental emotional stress. But there's actually two other categories of stress that we don't commonly think of. The next thing over here is going to be nutritional stress. So nutritional stress is anything that goes into our body. So it's eating too much food, eating too little food, eating overly processed food or food with a poor nutrient makeup. If we eat something that we're allergic to or sensitive to, that's going to be a stress on our body as well. It's drugs, alcohol, prescription medication, smoking, secondhand smoking, anything that goes into our body. So if I walk outside and I'm allergic to the trees outside, or if I'm allergic to my cat, those are things that are going to be going into my body that are going to be causing us stress. And most of the time in our new lifestyle, through pollution or poor quality of food, poor diet, this is usually turned up on high as well. So we start to see that bucket fills up pretty quickly. And then we get to our last section over here, which is going to be called movement stress. Now, movement stress is things like manual labor is a stress on the body, or being in pain or not moving correctly. Those are going to be stresses on the body. Exercise is actually a stress on the body. That's why it elicits a response. We give a stress to the body, it adapts to that stress and gets better. But the problem is if we get all gung-ho about achieving a goal. So we start to turn this up on high. We go into the gym, we run on the treadmill for an hour a day, we lift all these weights. It starts to add a whole bunch of stress. Well, this one is turned on high, this one is turned on high, and this one is turned on high. That bucket fills up really, really quickly. This is why most people don't see results immediately in the gym, because their bucket is too full. Okay? Which brings me to my last point over here. Now, if any of us have ever led a group of people before, we'll go off of this. This is the amount of work you give those people or the amount of stress you give them. It's the same thing. And this is their performance. Now, if you don't give them any work at all, how is their performance? It's probably not very good, right? They have nothing to do, so why would they do anything? We start to move down that line, we start to give them too much work, more work than they can handle. Their performance probably gets a little sloppy, right? Finally, we start to give them way too much work, they stop doing anything, and eventually they quit. I know our bodies are in the exact same way. If we don't give it any stress, why would it adapt? It has no need to adapt. It can just stay the same way it is. When we start to give it too much stress, we end up over here. This is what's called diminishing returns. Okay, where we're working harder, yet getting less results. Finally, we move down the line and we end up in what's called a harmful dose. Now, this is where I say these are the people that are working out 3 hours a day. They're only eating 800 to 1,000 calories a day, and they're still not seeing those results. We've all seen those persons. That's because they're in this harmful dose. Their body is in too much stress because their diet took them to here, right? Their mental, emotional stress took them to here, and then we start to add in exercise, it took them to here. Now they're seeing diminishing returns. What do we do when we see less results? We eat less, and we exercise more, eventually ending up in what's called that harmful dose. So we need to pull you back in to what's called this sweet spot, okay? Now the sweet spot here is what's the minimum effective dose. We want to give you the least amount of work with the most amount of results out of that. So the first thing we do is we need to test to see how much stress is in your bucket. Now in Endomath we have our DHEA and cortisol to kind of test out that stress, to see how stressed you are, so we can see where on this line are you sitting, so we can give you the proper results off of that.